move towards a close with a set of annotations, not a summary, but a set of annotations by two voices who have held this institution. I'll thank everyone in the organization in a moment, but two voices who have held this institution, BAK, Basis voor Actuele Kunst, this base across these past years, who have created the conditions for all these different critical practices to be propagated from here. And these are Clara Balaguer, a cultural worker interested in the decolonization of cultural production, head of BAK Civic Praxis Program, and the main organizer of the brilliantly titled Ultra Dependent Public School. I mean, that's a title that's a work in itself. The Ultra Dependent Public School. And Clara is joined by Alexandra, Martens, Serrano, interdisciplinary artist and researcher that works on more than human technologies and ecologies. She's also the coordinator of research and publications here at BAK. For the final annotations, Clara and Alexandra.
Welcome to Visible Administration. It is part of all of this. It's easy to forget when things function that there's actually a lot of people behind that make things function. Jonas likes everything to be very, very neat and very prepared. And then when he asked me and Alexandra to do something, we were rehearsing this morning. And I said, I'm sorry, Jonas, but I couldn't take all the tabs out of my browser because I actually need them open. So yeah, it's part of it. There are many people behind all of this. And yeah, sometimes seeing the labor that gets swept underneath the rug is a good reminder that institutions are flesh and bone. And I'm not inventing that just because we have like technical, but you'll actually see it on our script. This is Visible Administration. So we are the secretaries. Maybe to begin, I think in here somewhere, we've been taking notes for the last 2 days. I did yesterday while Alex was doing the floor managing, coordination, convening, the stuff that, made today run. Alongside many other people. And then today we switched off. At some point in the middle of the day, Alexandra started taking notes and then I started editing 7,000 words down to something that maybe will fit this 20 minutes that we have.
We'll try.
We made the lighting a bit like this, and we asked to sit in the back because you don't usually see the secretaries. And I think we've been rehearsing this a little bit, this parallel annotation, and talking a lot about the agency of the secretary and what is the secretary, thinking of like exoskeletal and endoskeletal creatures and the Ediacaran and the Cambrian and everything that came after, and trying to think of bodies that we can speak towards because we have bone, and these are the systems that we understand. So in the human body, the executive and the secretary are the brain and the spine, and neither is subordinate to the other. Without the spinal function of the secretary who coordinates, who files, who makes sure that all of the limbs are getting the same amount of transparent information, without this spinal function, which is not a single secretary, it's actually a concert of vertebra. It's a lot of people doing secretarial work. The brain cannot function. And yeah, but I won't spoil the notes. There's a little bit following on what Rada said at the beginning on, the difference between the corporate body, the legal person versus the natural person. And we've been thinking about this actually all week.
How could you not with these giant figures with transposed heads on different bodies?
Yes, putting a skeletal logic onto, it's a chimera. I think it was Sven who was saying, I believe it was Sven who was saying that propositions don't have to be factual, they just have to have imagination. So yeah, how do you imagine through contradiction? And how do you get through 7,000 words? Plus, I don't know how many you wrote.
I didn't count.
Okay. So this is just the secretaries having a cigarette. And when I entered yesterday and I saw all of you taking down notes, there's so many notebooks, so many note-taking devices, and usually the secretary cannot speak. She knows what's good for her. She knows where her bread is buttered. But yesterday when I was standing there, I thought, we're amongst many secretaries today, so perhaps we can speak a little more freely. All right, shall we begin?
Yes.
5 fictions, saints and sinners of carbon, who is subsidizing whose right to soil. A corporation entitled to human rights, legal persons, more legal than the natural. If you don't accept this fiction, you cannot negotiate your way into the right to exist, even though your existence is an incontrovertible fact. The problem is not that people are moving, the problem is that they cannot stay on their land. Severed from their landscapes, and thus from nature itself, we become unnatural, illegal persons. Norbert Wiener, God and Golem. Our Golem is talking back to us by Stephen Edwards, PhD. A golem in Jewish mythology was a creature made of clay into which life had been breathed. The acid test for a golem is its inability to speak. Co-optation happens when we stop the different poles of a movement from being who they are. When we stop talking to each other, we weaken. We cannot be who we are. Sometimes we stop talking to each other without even letting the other one know why. This is a fracture. This causes searing pain. Allow the radical flank to be what it is. Allow the negotiatory flank to do what it does. Let them stand how they want to stand. If we agreed to have a Kurdish nation state, they would let us exist, they would let us have soil, they would let us stand. But the nation state is based on the centralization of power, primarily the sovereignty of man, not woman, over nature. Is it possible to live without a ruler? Yes.
Victories, invisible victories, extended values onto these victories. No, magic doesn't work in theory, only in practice, so don't consider yourself a victim of history. Cause and effect presume that history marches forward. History as an earthquake, a sideways movement, a drop. Linear time produces a flat history, void of webbed existences. What benefits the original of life's story? What needs to be revised? What shapes give shape to our definition of history? What shapes testify to complex life and collectivist ecologies? Transformations begin in the imagination. To hope is to gamble. To live is to risk. To all the victories we haven't seen yet, here we are.
Here we are. Palestinian death coincides with botanical rebirth, poetics, afar, a form of survival, even this, trigger warning. The boy's finger already dead, the date seedling still alive, redacted, permission, to continue to hunt the living. I meant haunt, but autocorrect wrote hunts. Corporate news, I heard corporate nudes. Simon's proofreader's mark, stet, it means let it stand the way it wants to stand. Fiction number 4. All of our problems can be fixed by science and technology. You know it's this magical thing. Science ostensibly believes itself the antithesis of magic, the destroyer of faith, but it demands of its subjects an unshakable faith in its capacity to deliver. For any life to exist, regeneration is required. Regeneration means space, time, fallow periods, wastelands. Mindanao, he said Mindanao. In some parts of Mindanao, the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao, the ARM, wages small-scale and steady disruptive separatist warfare that displaces peace-loving indigenous groups like the Bajau, the Sama Dilaut, the Lumad, also under fire by the Philippine military itself in some parts of Mindanao. In some parts of Mindanao, these complex, violent clashes have kept tourism and real estate development at bay. So in Mindanao as a whole exists the greatest biodiversity in the Philippine archipelago, war ecology. Create an environment that causes famine. People don't die from war, they die from famine. But what caused the war that famished the earth and its politics?
Comradeship replaces ownership. It means the ideal. The deal? Building courage, strength, and endurance, still involved in ideal often difficult to achieve. Comrades as objects. Relation between objects. The relation between comrades is political and conditional and entails taking sides. Exclusive relationships, exclusive language, exclusive gathering. How to invite them. Are we, me, them? A body within a body, symbiotic bacteria, viruses, creatures, accepting, seeing, and generating for one another with fervor and intention. Objects in the service of revolution. Requires the dissolution of attachments, of uniqueness, of subjectivity. It's about the relation that configures, rupture, longing, loss, possibilities, comrade and communism, 0 points of relationality necessary to continue. What lies between people, property defines the gap between bodies, the size of a house, the size of a land, the length of a stick, the shape of a kite, the size of healthcare, and the relationality that can grow between them, between us.
If I flee, it's because of animals and plants that are dying. I would rather live in Sudan. Poor people, poor countries, but we say to France, leave us to be poor. We don't want to give you our uranium. We don't want to give you our gold. They gave us too little money for our golds, but we are not poor. Mufraka, we cook with it. When women went out to lead demonstrations in Sudan, the politicians said, your place is in the kitchen with the mufraka. So we take our mufraka, we bring it outside, our place is not in the kitchen. A personal story. The memory of yesterday was already banned, but then it was unallowed even to have memories of tomorrow. My father disappeared because he had the idea of a mural. Just the thought of it was enough. Just listen to the singing for today, tomorrow more. She stands in red lights and we listen, stead. Let her stand. Eco-fascist propaganda. Do I fit in this project? Art. I'm more involved in concrete options, opportunities for the survival of 50 million Kurds. The democratic women's freedom model still stands, despite the interventions of 32 members of the international coalition, regional interventions of Iraq and Iran, and others, the Netherlands included. The grass, roots. It survives because it is grass, rooted differently. It has its own solutions. EdgeRight.com says, some advantages associated with rhizomes and stolons, which is the rooting system of grass. Rapid spreading capability, recovery from wear and tear, resistance to weed intrusion. They have been destroying our villages. They destroy our relationship to nature. We believe we do not have the right to walk on the grass. It is sacred, every blade. By destroying our villages, they destroy our relationship to nature. They make us dependent on cities. Without cities, is there even a state? Where would they put their institutional headquarters without cities? Institutions cannot root in villages. They do not fit. She points to the easel pad with her pen.
Identical trouble for everyone. The comrade object outlives us all. Translation. The co-species planet will outlive us. First color to go, the great red vanishing, forbidden colors, the colors of resilience, forbidden remembrance. Yesterday was no more. There was only today. The muted colors of oppression, sonic encryption, transmittable translations. What vocabulary is available to create the urgency to evolve new words? I'll go speak. the use of coded expression to evade automated moderation algorithms for those of you setting fire. Embrace the joyous, no knowledge of political engagement, the new words and narratives to engage with the unknown trajectory. Words like instrument, spontaneity as death of political organization, history as earthquake, people as storms.
Institutions can only contain so many. In this room, we are at capacity at 120. Blades of grass, they cannot enter this place. Authority does not mind if you oppose it. What it cannot stand is if you render it irrelevant. The sicknesses of liberalism, only one was mentioned, individualism. It prevents collective struggle. Also collective struggle. There is a crisis. There is a crisis in collectivism. It is a crisis of yous and theys and I's and yous and ours and yours. And genealogy gives science back to society. Science is not elite. It does not belong to institutions. No class structures means there is no class at all. Class is dismissed. The right to refuse and embrace no hugs. Corporate legal persons casting doubt on reality speaks in French. The people, organic entities, internal enemies. Terror becomes legitimate self-defense. Fascism means power trumps facts. But what are facts? Facts are what we can agree on by a source, reputable source even, and if we cannot agree with them, then facts are not established. So without agreement, facts don't exist. So what does it matter if we check them? Society abhors a propositional vacuum. The primary purpose of theory is a lure for feeling. It's an arousal, providing purpose. Theory is another name for proposition. Theories are only to be judged by truth or falsehood. Fact-checking won't develop traction, really. Theories must be developed to lure imagination, regardless of their facticity or the truths they tell. What is the difference between potential and potentiality? I had to look this one up. Quora says, philosophically, potential indicates possession of a capacity to achieve or become something, while potentiality indicates the possibility of possessing the potential. So we are not able, we have no potential, we are only more able to be able so that we have potentiality. We are theory, we are not concrete, and I understand why Niloufer asked this question. How does she fit in this theater with 50 million of her people? At 120, we are at max capacity. With hope, we cannot learn.
Unknowability does not equate to not having intention. Thank you for Googling things, Clara.
I had to.
How do we maintain intention in degrees of abstraction, in the winds of the storm? Celebration and pleasure is not a something cynical. Orientational axis, ontological renderings, format concepts of commodities, water, thirst, fetish, basis for life. Utopian capitalism spreads into the large collective we that does not include, but allows themselves to shape portrayals of others. Natural flow, historic flow. Did plant or animal life forms dream of themselves as philosophers and revolutionaries?
I don't know, but there's a limit to what we can harvest.
Indeed.
What have you learned? It may not be a question. We found in the battleground of the airport a perfect concretion of our yes and no. No, you will not build that airport and commit ecocide. Yes, we will resist you and claim the land. Magic cannot happen in theory. It can only happen in practice. Fluid understandings of gender destroyed by colonialism. They destroyed our magic. They destroyed our capacity to speak to nature. To segregate the genders is to disappear these spirit speakers, another desacralization, another despiritualization of European tradition. Eco-conservatism, conservationism started as an expropriation from indigenous people, shift the stewardship of land to colonial power. Zoos, botanical gardens, the reserve, this is the only thing that they deserve. A collection that is preserved but apart, a menagerie. The rest is spiritless soil that may be dredged to within an inch of its life. The first thing that dies when we upheave that soil is the grass. Just be ourselves, individuals as safeguard of the plural, while we work behind the scenes to bring these justices together. Mustafa, I know you from the neighborhoods. We are on first name basis. 1 million households with single glass. The struggle to put warm food on the table already exists, but now you must choose warm house or warm food. It's another dimension to rent freeze. She repeats the points. She echoes the points. She has 4 of them. They are carefully crafted, delivered with practice of having said this for decades on the front line, in exile, in resistance, in exile, but still in resistance. Again and again, reshuffling the essential propaganda points until we are blue in the face. Political narrative built as folk song, built in with choruses, lyrics that may be memorized. She chants, and I don't remember in my notes if she agreed or disagreed with the following, but I wrote it down. Labor is the manifestation of a force of nature. Labor is not the source of use value. Dialectical relationships, human in nature, concrete forms of matter, consciousness and capability are interrelated. Social relations with the means of production, but capital, volume 3. Just as the savage must wrestle with nature to satisfy his wants, to maintain and reproduce life, so must civilized man. And he must do so in all social formations and under all possible modes of production. I have not read Capital Volume 3, but I know this one. So I call in the voice of Russell Means. There's an article published in 1980 on the left-ish magazine, Mother Jones. It used to be called For America to Live, Europe Must Die, and he was referring to indigenous America. And Russell Means says, the only possible opening for a statement like this is that I detest writing. The process itself epitomizes the European concept of legitimate thinking. What is written has an importance that is denied the spoken. My culture, the Lakota culture, has an oral tradition. So ordinarily, I reject writing. It is one of the white world's ways of destroying the cultures of non-European peoples, the imposing of an abstraction over the spoken relationship of a people. So what you read here is not what I've written. It is what I've said and what someone else has written down. I will allow this because it seems that the only way to communicate with the white world is through the dead, dry leaves of a book. I don't really care whether my words reach whites or not. They have already demonstrated through their history that they cannot hear, they cannot see, they can only read. Of course, there are exceptions. But the exceptions only prove the rule. The European materialist tradition of despiritualizing the universe is very similar to the mental process which goes into dehumanizing another person. It is a materialist doctrine that despises the American Indian spiritual tradition, our cultures, our lifeways. Marx himself called us pre-capitalist and primitive. We have common enemies, that's what binds us. We must gather, we must work together. In the face of the transnational, we need to think not just at the same scale, everything, everywhere, everyone, all together, all at once. But you don't need 100 unions, you just need one. Think in serious internationalist terms. We can't just be fact-checking, we have to be propagating, not be stuck in our inherited rivalries. We have to stop playing defense and mount our own united front attack. Applause. Do you want to reclaim institutions and make them do what they're supposed to do, or do you want to invent new structures? What is currently there is not working, it needs to go, it needs to break, it must die. Comrade objects. Propagate vision of radical egalitarian future. Objects are not neutral bystanders. We are making them, they are making us. Camarada, a term that comes from sharing space, a bed, a room, camara is shared. Maria, could you tell me the pronunciation of the word that you said? Sudruh. It means from the same species. A caveat. We have to wrap up, but I think this one's important.
We have to wrap up.
It's a political relationship, exclusive relationship. If we don't share these relations with everyone or everything, quality of kinship is that we are tools and objects to a caveat. This is not how kinship is built in pre-colonial concepts, at least not in the culture I grew up in.